The tree has a branch on both the front and the back, and in this video we're going to be constructing those branches. So on the template sheet that's called Tree Templates, you'll see here in the center that there's a branch back and a branch front. So the branch has a different piece for the front and the back because of how it fits into the project. We're going to want to make two branches, as I said, and we'll make one the mirror image of the other. So what we need to do is cut those pieces from medium weight chipboard, cut two branch backs, and cut two branch fronts, and label them. You can so that you will be able to create your mirror image. Then you also, for each branch, need a strip of 1/4 inch medium weight chipboard, and that's with the stiffness going in the long direction. You also need a piece of cardstock that is a 1/4 inch wide that has score tape on the back of it, one strip for each branch. And then our usual cardstock joining strips are cut 3/4 inch wide, scored at 3/8 inch. Well, because this branch is only a 1/4 inch deep, we need to cut one side of that down to 1/4 inch. So one side remains the normal 3/8, and then just trim the other side down so it's only a 1/4 inch tall. So those are the pieces we need to get started. So next I'm going to lay out and cut the pieces of the 1/4 inch chipboard strip that I need to create the branch, and then I'll be back. I'm back, and I've just cut out my little pieces and I've laid them right along the branch back templates, just so we could talk about this for a minute. You can see, I think, that coming along this front edge here that we have, these are what I've been calling inner or innie joins. They're bending towards the inside, and this one is that way, here again down at this end, and also at this corner. And then we switch to two joins that go towards the outside. So because these strips are so thin, I'm just going to use a strip of this cardstock with the 1/4 inch score tape on it, and all of these that I know are inner joins here, I'm going to just take a strip of this joining and put it right along them, and in fact this one is an inner join as well. And I'll probably move this off down here onto my mat so I can keep things pretty straight. So I'm going to join these up, put the strip down, and then line up just a butt joint in between them all. Keep moving down here, and this doesn't have to be this long, so I'll just cut that off, put that last strip on there. We'll give this a burnish, and then make little bends for all of them. And I think you can see here how we're starting to create the branch. Now these next two joins are outside joins, and so we can follow the same principle. We'll just put our cardstock joining strip on the opposite side. So you can see, we don't see it here because it's on the back if I flip it over. So I'm going to just take another piece of this cardstock joining strip and join these pieces. And I'm going to flip it over so that I can see what I'm doing, but it's the same principle. We don't need quite this length, so I'll just save this to the side in case we need it later. Give that a burnish. So now we've created the perimeter for our branch. Now you'll notice that these are sticking off a little bit longer than the back, and that there's a reason for that, and we'll get to that in a second. But before we continue, we want to check and see if there's any overhang of that cardstock joining strip over our chipboard, and if there is, just come back and give it a little trim. So you could use your craft knife. I'm just taking my scissors along the length of this, kind of checking both sides. It'll just make our lives easier if those edges are pretty even. One little piece there. Okay, so no matter if you're making the mirror image or the first one, it doesn't matter. You will make them both in this format, and then you'll just flip it over if you're making the mirror image. So the next thing we want to do is to get out one of our branch backs. This is one of my branch backs, so you can see I have branch back written on it, and here's the inside. I always try to remember to write inside so that I know which one I'm working on. And what we want to do is attach this strip now to this branch back. And what we're going to do, and we're not going to worry about overhangs down here at the end, what we'll do is start down here at the short little ½ end, and we'll get that attached first, and then we'll work our way back. So what we're going to use to attach this is our joining strip that we cut down a little bit that I talked about in the beginning. And what I like to do is to mark on the inside which edge I'm going to add that to by just putting a little arrow on the inside so that I know. I don't need this right now. So I know that I'm going to add my cardstock joining strip to that bottom side. Whenever we have an outer join, and we have two outer joins right here, I like to darken those a little bit, because when we get to those points, when we're adding this strip, we have to cut our strip. We can't, otherwise we can just add it to the length here and proceed down like this. But when we get to a part where there's an outer join, we have to cut this strip. And then remember, it's the 1/4 inch side that's going to get attached, and we're just going to line that up with the bottom edge. And then we'll cut two other short pieces to go here. And put those on. Now, it's possible to do this in one step, and to use these strips as also the pieces that join it together. But because we're working in mirror images, to me it's too easy to get confused. So I'd rather take that extra step and then not worry about, am I working mirror or not. And again, we'll just kind of come back, and if this top edge needs a little haircut, just trim off any excess cardstock that might be along the way. Okay. So once we've got those strips on, we need to flip it over, and any place that we have an inside join, we need to make a release cut. So I can see the little pieces here, the little lines in between them. And I'm just going to make a little snip there so that it'll be able to bend. And so now we should be able to come and form this and put this on top of our inside piece. We probably need to come down here at this 1/2 inch part and just make some notches, because there's just not a lot of real estate when we get to this tight corner down here. So I'm going to remove the score tape backing from this whole length, and then I'll come back and we'll attach the perimeter to the inside back here. Okay, I have all my score tape backing removed, and I'm just going to start by putting this down fairly lightly so that I can adjust things if I need to. But to start at this end down here where we have our 1/2 inch, and just line that up, and then work my way up. First one edge, just lightly, and then come back and get this other edge. Needs to be adjusted. I have this little Cricut spatula I can use if I need to adjust something. Okay, let's see what we've got going here. Okay, so I have all of those aligned there. This one needs to be adjusted just a little bit. There we go. Now I'll get the tip of my bone folder in there. It's a little tight quarters, but make sure you give that a nice good burnish coming up there. So now let's look at these ends that are overhanging. And I think you can see that there's something going on here. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit, and you can see that a little bit better. So we have some overhang here, and what we want to do is trim it so that the outside edge that's not attached to anything stays as long as it is, but we trim this back at an angle so that the edge that is near that chipboard is the right length. And obviously these little pieces of cardstock joining strip need to get out of here as well. And then we'll do the same thing on this side. Cut this back. So we end up with an angled cut on each side that is angled back to the chipboard base that we attached it to. Okay, so now we can put on our other side, our front. It says branch front, and because there isn't a lot to these branches, on some of the other things you'll see I add little ledger strips to help with gluing, but I don't think that's necessary for this little branch. So I'm just going to run a bead of glue around the top of that ledge. Probably put a little piece of patty paper down here just in case my gluing gets a little too enthusiastic. And just run a bead of glue along there. And then we'll just set this on top. Kind of work your way around. It should fit nicely down at these bottom parts of the branch. And just kind of overhangs up here at the top. Let me flip this over so you can see. You can see how the branch back has stopped short of the front. And that's because this piece here is going to go on top of the trunk of the tree. And so that's why there's this difference in height here. So you want to just chase it around a little bit, make sure everybody is where it needs to be, give it some pressure, and then let it sit and dry before we put our finishing strips on. So now that our branch is completely dry, we can go ahead and do some finishing. And what we'll need for each branch is a strip of brown that is cut to 7/8 inch wide, and then it's scored at 1/4 inch in on both sides to create a 3/8 inch channel in the middle. And then there's just a piece of score tape on each one of those sides. And then we'll also need a little piece of brown that's about 2 by 2.5, and that has been covered with the score tape. So we're going to get started using this long strip, and the first thing we want to do is to cut a little release cut about 1/4 inch in from the end and only on one channel. I'm using the upper channel here, and then bend this back here to create a little fold. So that's what we've done to get started, and that little fold is going to fit in the first notch here of the branch. And I'm sorry, I forgot to say that this black that you see here is that anytime that I know that there's going to be a little gap when I wrap around, and that's on anything that has that kind of bends in, I just take a little marker and mark that so that the chipboard won't show. Okay, so we've made our little notch here. Let's remove some score tape backing. I'm going to remove it about halfway down here. Just trim these guys a little so they're not in the way. And then we'll put this little notch right in the notch of the branch. And I'm only sticking down the first part of the channel there. And then I'm flipping it over so we can take a look at the inside. And what we want to do here is to trim, oh, I don't have this on very straight. Get this on straighter first. Get that central channel in the central channel. So on the back side here, we can come across straight, and then we can come at an angle to mirror this angle that the chipboard is at. I have to turn it around this way in order to see what I'm doing here. So that, and we can also, let's also just take our marker and darken this inside edge here on both sides. So now we've got our brown cardstock up around that angle, and we've made a release cut so it can go around this bend up here at the top. And now we're ready to start moving our way down the branch. So what we do is we just get the central channel adhered down to begin with, and then come in from the side, and anytime there's a change in angle of the branch, we make a release cut in the side channels. And then we move on to the next, keeping it aligned there in the center until we get to the next change in angle. Again, make our little release cuts. And notice I haven't stuck any of the side pieces down yet. I'm going to in a minute because all of these are bending in. And then when I get down here to the end, just want to take a little pause because we're going to have to cut a wedge, come in at an angle and cut a little wedge in order to make this turn, because it's quite a sharp turn. So I like to come in at an angle to begin with that's a little bit steeper than the angle of the branch. And we can go ahead and get that adhered down on both sides. I can do these back here because they're all ready to go. Now we can make our turn here. And as we make our turn, we can see that we've got some little pointy ears sticking out there that need to be trimmed. So that's our wedge. Don't cut it too deeply or you'll see the chipboard underneath there. You can always take out a little insurance with your marker if you feel that you need it. And you probably don't want to stick that piece down so much. I did, but I'm pulling it back up yet because we have to be able to get our scissors in to make the cuts around the other end down here. And again, I'm coming at an angle on either side that's a little bit up from the angle of the branch. Now we can stick those two sides down. And now we can make this turn and see if we need to probably take a little wedge out of there, I would say, on either side. Doesn't have to be too big. Okay, so now we're ready to turn. And on this side we have angles that are going the opposite direction. So you can see I'm just kind of peeling this back this way, and now I can easily wrap around here and get to the next place I need to make a relief cut, right there and here. And this is why we put the marker down, because as we put the next one down, you'll see that the chipboard actually does show, but with the marker there it's not noticeable. Now you'll see when I do the leaves, I do a slightly different method because there's more of a, I just think that it has the potential to be more noticeable on the leaves than it does here on the branch. So, and we don't have to do anything on the back because the back won't show. Alright, now we're coming up to this end here, and we want to do the same kind of thing that we did at the beginning, and that is we can trim this even with the back edge and then up to this angle, and then we'll need a little release cut here in the front. I'm going to make that first and just put that side down. And then I'm going to come in on the side and I think I have to use these little scissors maybe to get in here to cut this angle. There we go. And this can actually wrap around to the back what I just, you know, this here. If you can get it to stick down, that's fine. It's not going to show. So that's the first part of covering the branch. So now we're ready to cover this top part. And the first thing I'm going to do is get my marker and just put a little bit of black down near where these joins are, just in case any of that shows. I think we'll end up covering that up, but just in case, I'm going to do that. What we're going to do is put this piece and cover the whole top, but we don't have to come down farther than we already put our cardstock on the other side. So you can just kind of look and see and find a place that it looks like the right, just about the right place to put it. Remove your score tape backing and I'm going to put mine, I think, right about, I'm not going past the notches. I think I'm going to align mine with my notches, so that if we look here on the front, these are my 2 notches. And then I'm going to come in here. You can either use your scissors, it's kind of sticky, so I'm going to just cut this back about, so it's about 3/8 inch overhang on all the sides. And after we're done with this part, I'm going to take an alcohol wipe and clean up these scissors. They've gotten a little gummy, but this will work for now. And then we're basically just going to wrap this around. So we're going to come in at each one of these corners and get our marker, because we might end up and get the edge of the chipboard there, just on each one of these corners. You can obviously do this before you put the chocolate cardstock on. It would be easier. Okay. Come in to each of these points and just cut out a little wedge. Each time we're just cutting out a little wedge. And now we can take each one of these and wrap them neatly around. I like to work from the front so I can kind of see what's going on. You can use your bone folder to get a nice edge there and then wrap it. Just kind of using the edge of that bone folder to get it to wrap nicely around. Encouraging it to, just supporting it with my finger in the back there. Get that last little guy there, and then we'll flip this over and give it a really good burnish from the back. And then we can hit these corners a little bit if they've gotten a little too pointy and give them a little rounding. Make sure everything is nicely burnished. And that prepares our branches for receiving pattern paper, which we will do later.